future. And in a broader, timeline, what we are targeting, most of the people by 2041 or and in some cases 2050. It depends on the technological advancement and many other things. Especially as we are targeting to be a transition to renewable energy, it also needs the cost of technology, and wherever or where the cost will go, it is very difficult to anticipate right at this moment. But what we are doing, considering the past trend, so we are looking forward to see that one in this. And the second paper is the risk analysis and cost implication of LNG import in South Asia, evidence from Bangladesh and the Pakistan. So this paper is by Nijamus Hiba Ohuna, graduate student, East West University of Bangladesh. And the third paper will be does governance matter for the transition towards renewable energy, evidence from the RCEP countries. These countries mainly are from the Asia Pacific region and also Australia and New Zealand. So it's an experience from them. And this is by Syed Arafat Jubair, graduate student, Department of Economics, Shah Jalan University. And the last paper is climate shocks and income smoothing behavior in Nepal, smoothing consumption by smoothing income by Sushant Rijal, student, School of Arts, Kathmandu University, Nepal. So the first three papers will be offline or presented here, and the last paper will present online. So, and for the presenters, you will get 10 minutes each, and after 5 minutes, you will get a notification, and before 1 minute, you will get another notification. As we are running, I mean, would like to be very strict on time to conclude your within the time. So now we are the first presenter in the power sector of Bangladesh by 2041.
Honorable Chair, in-depth analysis. But the main purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview, provide a high-level overview of the findings we have gathered. Those who are interested in technical details or methodological framework, we would like to share more information separately. So, if I may begin, reducing fossil fuel dependency, increasing energy security, and environmental sustainability. Amidst rising demand, Bangladesh must transition to renewable energy for Bangladesh is a must, and to do that, the country needs funding. But there is a lack of comprehensive research, data, and analysis on the required financing needed to meet the targets. In this context, we have estimated yearly investment required based on two scenarios. One, which is based on Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan to achieve 40 megawatt capacity from renewable sources by 2041 in the power sector.
Gigawatt.
40,000 megawatt.
Yeah.
And another one is 11% of the total demand, which is mentioned in the Integrated Energy and Master Power Plan 2023. At the same time, we have also conducted a feasibility study of battery integrating storage system, and we have also explored financing options to meet those investments. If we look at the global renewable energy trend, so the trend is now shifting towards the renewable energy. Previously, there was a hydropower growth. Now, solar and wind are growing rapidly. Additionally, Russia-Ukraine war and advanced technologies and reducing cost innovation have further boosted the development. Countries like China, Germany, India, they have already large share of renewable in their power sector, and Bangladesh Bangladesh can take lessons from it and utilize it in its portfolio. If we look at the Bangladesh's renewable potential, we do not have so many sources like India, but we still have untapped potential. We can still have around 40 megawatt of solar, 30,000 megawatt of wind. So previously, Dr. Shariar Chaudhary sir is here. He also explained three scenarios in his renewable energy roadmap based on PSMP 2016. However, sir didn't specifically mention the corresponding investment. And here we did that with the MCPP and IEPMP. In terms of technology, we have considered 5 technology, among them 2 rooftop, small and large. Another 2 is large and small scale ground mounted solar. Another one is onshore wind. And methodology, we have incorporated compound annual growth rate, and we have also calculated LCOE, which is cost to produce 1 unit of electricity over the entire lifetime of a power plant. So if we look at the scenario 1, if we want to get 40,000 megawatt by the end of 2041, we need to grow annually 24.78%, beginning from 2025. For scenario 2, we need to grow at a 13.65 rate. We have conducted field visits and we have collected data and then estimated a per megawatt installation cost based on 2 approach. One is least cost approach and another one is maximum cost approach. So least cost are the values reported by the agencies. Those were the least, and for the maximum cost, high values were considered, and we can see that roughly $1 million is needed for per megawatt installation cost. And these are the year by year capital investment plan. You can see for scenario 1, under least cost scenario, we need $214 million in 2025, and by the end of 2041, we need like 7 billion. And other values are there for other scenarios and approach. If we compare these values with the projected GDP, so we have considered two GDP scenario. One is very optimistic based on the perspective plan 2041, which is 9.02%, which is now seem highly unlikely. So, but if we look at the share of investment to the GDP, we see that the share is very low, and none of the requirements exceed 0.2% or 0.5% of the GDP till 2033 and 2040 respectively. Now, if we come to the present scenario, current trends, because now the GDP growth for 2024 and 25 is 5.82%. So if we consider roughly 6% GDP growth onwards, we still can see that the growth rate are the share of investment is very low for the second scenario, but for the first scenario, the share is pretty high. At the end of 2041, it requires around 1.36% under the maximum cost scenario and 1% of the GDP under the least cost scenario, which is huge because the country's education budget is only around 2% of the GDP. So in terms of LCD, but they have operating cost. So we have calculated fixed operating cost and utilize it, and we found total cost to be under least cost scenario, least cost approach, and for scenario 1 is $60 billion, and scenario 2 it's $11.15 billion. And we can see the technology wise disaggregation of the total cost that was under least cost scenario. It is a maximum cost scenario. So if we do a sensitivity analysis, we see that the costs are significant but manageable. Even under the pessimistic scenario, 6% growth, direct investment remain only a small fraction of GDP, and if not one, under any macroeconomic situation. But for scenario 1, we need robust macroeconomic growth. Also, the target, this target was calculated based on the energy GDP ratio. So if the GDP growth is less, then the target will be revised there. So the revised target of scenario will be still possible. Additionally, solar and lower tariff rates, if we reduce these tariff rates, then it will be much more feasible. So I don't have much time. We also did like better integrating system. It is still not affordable. Its cost is very high, but there is a decreasing trend. And key challenges are like tariff rate is very high for the renewable product. There is policy consistency. In 2023 and 24 ADP, only 2.47% of the allocation was allocated to the RE projects, and within 9 years, they have 3 times growth using accelerated depreciation, generation-based incentive, viability gap funding. Vietnam did the same in 2017. They had only 0 gigawatt capacity, and by 2021 the capacity rises to 22 gigawatt, which is huge. So Bangladesh can learn from this. Bangladesh should can diversify financing options using the footprint of India and Vietnam, can enhance green bonds, access concessional finance from World Bank, ADB. PPP will be a very significant factor if it is utilized in the right way. Reducing custom duties on RE products is necessary. Providing long-term tax benefit also necessary. At the same time, the existing power plants, IPMP and MCPP, they look very ambitious, so they need to be revised based on practical situation. And at the same time, we should foster partnership with technologically advanced countries for knowledge transfer and capacity building. And thank you.
Thanks for the nice presentation. I mean, we would not allow questions right at this moment because we have a question and answer session. I mean, end of all the 4 presentation, and then we also have discussions. Now I'd like to invite the presenter of second presentation of risk analysis and cost implications of LNG import in South Asia, evidence from Bangladesh and Pakistan.
Thank you, respected Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Nizia Musiba Ohna. The title of my paper is Risk Analysis and Cost Implications of LNG Imports in South Asia, Evidence from Bangladesh and Pakistan. Now, in the global quest of sustainable energy solutions, liquefied natural gas or LNG has emerged as a crucial player. Developing economies like Bangladesh and Pakistan are increasingly importing LNG, which has raised various concerns, objections, and opinions among the policymakers and think tanks. Bangladesh and Pakistan both entered the LNG era in 2018 and 2015 respectively. As we can see here, in 2021, both Bangladesh and Pakistan imported the highest amount of LNG. Here, Bangladesh's imports surged 95-folds, whereas Pakistan's by 43-folds compared to their starting year. A drop afterwards 2021 is only due to Russia-Ukraine war, which led price-sensitive economies like Bangladesh and Pakistan to reduce their LNG imports. Thus, we can realize that developing economies like Bangladesh and Pakistan are not only on the verge of LNG import risks and exposures, but also developed countries' demand may outweigh the need of energy in developing economies. Thus, my research paper addresses 4 questions. Firstly, we view the extent of LNG import risk, then its impact on import cost and sectoral cost, and then lastly, we view the LNG import diversification level. Now, for literature review, initially, Krut et al., Kabalu, Sovakol, and Mukherjee identified various kinds of risk indicators. However, Zhang, in 2013, came with a comprehensive framework to assess energy import security, constructing a 2-phase data envelope analysis model. Upon that, Sun et al. Expanded the framework by evaluating the impact of this risk on import cost and spillover of this cost on some selective domestic sectors. We have contributed in the broader literature in 2 ways. Firstly, we have investigated the extent of LNG import risks from the perspective of 2 developing economies. And secondly, we have incorporated a new risk, namely foreign exchange reserve risk or FX risk, as developing economies are prone to dwindling forex reserves. For methodology, we have quantified risk in 3 stages. Firstly, the supply stage comprising country risk, then the acquisition stage with transport risk, and lastly, the dependence stage comprising dependence risk and foreign exchange reserve risk. Now, for country risk, we have taken the amount of LNG imported to each country and the political stability rank of those countries. For quantifying transport risk, we have taken 4 things into account. Firstly, the amount, as higher amount initiates higher risk. Secondly, the distance traveled. As longer the distance, it increases the possibility of storm or cyclone attacks or piracy attacks. Thirdly, we have taken weather conditions. As NIE in 2014 has suggested that more than 5% maritime accidents are caused by meteorological factors. Here is the tropical cyclone regions marked in colored boxes with the severity. For Bangladesh, a large part of LNG cargoes passes through the North Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean. And for Pakistan, most of the LNG cargoes passes through the Arabian Sea bordered by East Africa along with those two, which are all marked in colored boxes. Lastly, to quantify transport risk, we have taken military interference as forms of voice and accountability rank, as piracy attacks has become prominent over the years by Somalian and Yemen Houthis. Thirdly, for quantifying dependence risk, we have taken the ratio of net LNG imports to countries' total energy consumption. And lastly, for FX risk, we have taken the ratio of LNG import cost of a year and the foreign exchange reserve risks of that year. Now, after calculation of this, we have done risk pre-processing. It is necessary to ensure that no individual indicators have a value of 0, and this pre-processing has no insignificant impact on the evaluation index. Now, direct calculation of risks will not provide us the true picture of the underlying uncertainties. Thus, to mitigate the possibility of subjective biases, we have used a 2-phase data envelope analysis model with goal programming approach to understand the dominance of each risk annually and thoroughly. Here, in the first phase, we will obtain common weights. Obtain the weights of every risk factors annually by maximizing the variation of risks. Whereas in the second phase, we will obtain the common weight for every risk throughout a period of time by minimizing the deviation for risks from varying weights. After obtaining the weights, we will use common weights for our risk calculation, as common weights are more suitable in capturing the thorough dominance of any particular risk for a particular period of time. Then we move to analyze the impact of this risk on import cost. We have used a random effects GLS regression model, assuming that the alpha I, the unobserved effect, has no dominance on the explanatory variables like LNG import risk RIT and spot market prices PIT. ICIT is the LNG import cost measured in million US dollars. Then, to understand the spillover of this cost on some domestic sectors, we have used Leontief's input-output model, and after determining del CN, the rate of change in the cost of power sector, we have measured the spillover of import costs on some selective sectors for Bangladesh and Pakistan. Lastly, for viewing the import diversification status, we have used Herfindahl-Hirschman index. Here, a value near 1 signifies lack of diversification, whereas a value near 0 indicates high diversification. Now, empirical findings. Firstly, we'll view the varying weights and common weights from Bangladesh. Initially, there is no dominance from any risks, as Bangladesh only imported from Qatar. However, as they started diversifying, we can see that dependence risk was prominent in 2019, followed by country risk in 2020 due to corona pandemic as suppliers halt their supply. In 2021, if we remember, Bangladesh imported the highest amount of LNG. Thus, foreign exchange reserve risk was prominent. And lastly, due to the Russia-Ukraine war in 2022, country risk was prominent. But for Bangladesh, the overall dominance comes from the foreign exchange reserve risk with 27.4%. Again, for Pakistan, initially there is no dominance from any risk, as they also only imported from one source, Qatar. However, as they started diversifying, either transport risk or foreign exchange reserve risk was issue for Pakistan. But overall, the dominance comes from the transport risk, as Pakistan imports from countries irrespective of the distances. Here is the extent of risk for both the countries. We can see a persistent increase in LNG import risk for Bangladesh and Pakistan, unlike the outliers like Russia-Ukrainian war or corona pandemic. The import risks peaked in 2021 for Bangladesh at 54.22%, whereas for Pakistan in 2019 at 53.1.5%. We can see this rising extent also reflects the instability in international supply chains and growing consumption patterns. After using the random effects GLS regression model, these are our estimated equations for both the countries. Here, the interpretations are a rise of 10% in LNG import risk will cause the LNG import cost to rise by $260.2 million for Bangladesh and $304.6 million for Pakistan. Now we will view the spillover of this cost on some selective domestic sectors for both the countries for the year 2021 to 2022. Here we can see power sector bear the maximum cost in both the countries, being the sole importer of LNG. Next, hotel and restaurants for Pakistan, as Bangladesh uses LPG in cooking compared to Pakistan. Then chemical sector is the second most affected sector in Bangladesh due to high upfront cost. And after invention of charcoal in 2020 in Pakistan, they mostly uses that for their industrial purposes. Textile industries are cost increase is low in Bangladesh compared to Pakistan, as textile industries in Bangladesh are moving towards green renovation and energy efficiency. Lastly, Bangladesh's least impacted sector is agriculture due to high government subsidies, LPG, and diesel use. To view the LNG import diversification state, as we can see that in 2022, both countries reached a very good diversification state, unlike their starting year. To conclude, firstly, for Bangladesh, the dominance of foreign exchange reserve risk, and for Pakistan, the dominance from the transport risk is prominent throughout the years. Secondly, a 10% rise in LNG import risk will cause the LNG import cost for Bangladesh to go up by $216.2 million, whereas Pakistan by $304.6 million. Lastly, in both the countries, power sector bears the maximum burden, followed by the chemical sector in Bangladesh and hotels and restaurants in Pakistan. With this, I have come to an end. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for the presentation. And she has highlighted the LNG import risk. So it's not only in LNG, but I think in all the fossil fuels, Bangladesh is heavily dependent on coal and liquid fuel as well. Anyway, so our honorable discussion will discuss all these things. So now I'd like to invite the presenter of the third paper. Does governance matter for the transition towards renewable energy? Evidence from the RCEP countries.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank respected chair and discussion of this session alongside our fellow presenters and all the audience who are present here. So this is Saud Arafat Jubair, and alongside me I have Mr. Tuhin Ahmed, who is my co-author, who is the lecturer of economics of Maulana Bhashani Science and Technology University, who is not present here. So I will discuss about how the governance matter for the countries, a group of countries which are the RCEP countries. And we will focus on the background and objective. Then I will talk about our literature review. Then I will move forward to the data and methodology description of our study. Then the result analysis. And after that, I will conclude my session by mentioning some recommendations from our part. So as we all know, renewable energy can be generated through various kind of natural sources. It can be wind, it can be tides, and it can be neothermal heat. So why we are studying the RCEP countries, there are some objectives or some background there. So RCEP countries are the combination of 15 advanced and some developing economies countries. And although there are some studies, however, the nexus between the governance and energy nexus, and also the relationship between these factors have not been explicitly analyzed. So we have analyzed that. And as we have actually made this slide in the Power BI, the GIS slide, but due to technical difficulties, I can't show this explicitly. But if we want to see, we can see that the expertise of China in the sector of renewable energy is explicitly increasing. So at that point in time, we can encourage that there are some countries in the RCEP which can be leveraged or which can be benefited due to that. And there are some literature review which have been concluded here, and we know how the governance attitude and their behavior or their strategic position can impact a country's renewable energy. However, sometimes institutional quality can impact the excessive regulation, and this can impact the renewable energy consumption also. It is true that the flow of FDI boost the demand for fuel. However, sometimes it can also impact the renewable energy consumption. Our data and methodology, as we have mentioned earlier, we have actually taken the 6 governance indicators explicitly. These are the independent variables, which are the control of corruption, government effectiveness, political stability, regulatory quality, rule of law, voice and accountability. These are all the independent variables. And after that, we have also taken some control variables, whether it is the FDI or the trade, urban population as a proxy variable of the urbanization, and also the carbon dioxide emissions and methane emissions. And as dependent variable, as we all know, the percentage of the renewable energy consumption has been taken there. And this is the data and methodology part. And as we have mentioned earlier, we have actually included the 5 additional indicators, and these 6 models have been used explicitly. Why we have used these 6 models as these variables, which are the independent variables. These are the governance indicators. These can be multi-independently correlated. So we have actually incorporated these variables explicitly. And from there on, we have used the 2-panel unit root test, and then we have also used the panel co-integration test. After that, we have used the 3 econometric technique, which are the pooled ordinary least square, fully modified least square, dynamic ordinary least square. These are actually used to identify the endogeneity and to address the serial correlation that can occur there. Then I will move forward to the result part. This is actually the descriptive statistics of our study variables, which are the mean, standard deviation, and min max of these variables. Then I have already shown these variables, which is the correlation matrix of the governance indicators. And as we can see, we have actually used a method to give to actually identify if there is any inefficiency in the regression result, and if the absolute value of the partial equation is greater than the value of the semi-partial equation, there can be some sort of inefficiency. So from there on, we have actually identified, or we have actually accumulated the result of the panel unit root test and panel co-integration test. And as we have mentioned earlier, the 6 different models have been run, and these have been accumulated into 2 subgroups here also. And from there on, we have actually identified the panel unit root test. And from there on, we have also run the robustness check through the canonical co-integrating regression equation. And from these equations or from these results, if I want to summarize our result, we can say that good governance like rule of quality or rule of law actually significantly impact the renewable energy consumption. However, we have found the voice and accountability not a significant impact in influencing the renewable energy consumption. And as it is suspected that the emissions of carbon dioxide and methane emissions hurt the renewable energy consumption. And from there on, we moved to the conclusion and policy implication part. And if we want to see the other slide, we can see that if the rise in CC, which is the control of corruption, then the renewable energy consumption can increase. So from there on, we actually suggested some laws like anti-corruption laws can be implemented. Public-private partnership can be encouraged with clear accountability. Also, the administrative capacity needs to be improved. Although our study has not found any significant impact of the voice and accountability, however, voice and accountability can actually direct some ways which can mobilize the FDI. So in our study, we have found a significant impact of FDI in the renewable energy consumption. So there can be the securing of political stability and regulatory quality that can significantly impact the renewable energy consumption. The reformation of trade policy should be there. As our previous presenters have also discussed about this, we need to think about our reliance on the imported fossil fuels, and we need to manage the urbanization for green growth. We have to discuss about how we can actually promote the green growth through the urbanization. So that is from my part. Thank you for giving me the floor.
Thanks for the presentation. So our last one is the online presentation, right?
Yes.
So
Hello, is my voice clear?
Yes.
can you hear us? Mr.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you very clearly. Thank you very much.
Okay,
So
so I will
yeah.
share my slides.
So you will get,
Can you see my slides?
yeah,
Yeah.
we can.
Okay,
So
okay, so
you will
hello
get,
everyone.
can you
Sorry?
hear us? You will
Yes, I
get-
can hear you.
Then we'll have a discussion by our honorable discussion. And after that, we'll have a question answer session. Okay? We'd like to tell to be here till the question answer sessions.
Sure.
Thank you. You can proceed with the presentation.
Okay, sure. So hello everyone. I am Susant Rizal, a Bachelor of Economics from Kathmandu University. So the topic of my study is climate shock and income smoothing behavior in Nepal, smoothing consumption by smoothing income. So basically, whenever a household gets affected by a climate shock, their property or their assets gets destroyed. So it directly affects their food consumption expenditure. And after that, the household utilizes various smoothing mechanisms to balance their consumption level back to their sufficient amount. So this might be totally subjective according to the household. In this paper, I will study the effectiveness of such smoothing mechanisms. Nepal contributes only 0.04% of global CO2 emission, but it is very affected. But it is affected very greatly by climate change. The vulnerability of climate change is also due to the fact that agriculture sector of Nepal employs almost 60% of the labor force of Nepal, and the agriculture is not so much developed. It is still heavily unmechanized. The terrain is also poor, and this makes the people of Nepal vulnerable to climate shocks. To cope with such climate shock, households migrate to urban places and perform different non-farm works. They borrow in the credit market, they sell their properties, or they do a farm reallocation, and many more. And many literature have shown that households adopt this mechanism as a response to the shock. So the point of my research is to study the effectiveness of these adaptation mechanisms, and do they actually help to bring consumption level back to their sufficient amount. So for studying and that, I will be utilizing household risk and vulnerability survey, SRVS, which is a panel data, of course, and I take two waves of SRVS. The data has information about nationally represented 6,000 households of Nepal, and there is pattern of exposure to the SOCs and different vulnerability and other indicators. So this data makes it very feasible for me to conduct this study. The treatment effect of certain adaptation cannot be measured by simply subtracting the outcome when a household is adapting versus when a household is not adapting, because in real life either household is adapting to climate shock or is not adapting to climate shock. There is no counterfactuals in real life. So below here is the formula for ATET. It calculates the difference in outcome when a household is subject to treatment effect and versus when a household is not subject to treatment effect. So this also faces the issues of counterfactuals, but our study is possible through matching. So I use propensity score matching, where the similar household are matched based on their propensity score, based on the propensity score of their covariates. So when the distribution of propensity score of the treatment and control group is similar, then we can match it. And the difference in outcome, the difference in food consumption of each treatment and control pair will be due to the fact that one household is subject to treatment while other household is not subject to treatment. So by this we can establish a causal estimate. In the first wave, the household is affected to climate shock, and I will see what happens to the food consumption level after the shock. I will calculate the difference in food consumption level. The positive difference means that food consumption has risen after the shock, which is very unlikely, while the negative difference means that the food consumption expenditure has fallen due to the shock. And this can also be shown causally, but I have not shown. And after that, I will add a few adaptation mechanisms and see what happens to the difference in food consumption level. Is the household being able to mitigate the negative impact of the shock? And for that, I will be using food consumption as a proxy. So this might also be the weak spot of my paper, because it might bring the question that can food expenditure be taken as proxy to household resilience or adaptability? But this might be for another research topic. So for now, I take it as given. So first of all, I do a simple EDA to see what the data says without complex statistics. In the first figure, we can fall in consumption due to shocks. There is a greater fall in the case of climate shocks, and as a response to that, household, they reduce their food consumption, they reduce their non-food consumption. As we can see in the second figure, household spend their saving, they spend their borrowing, they sell their properties, or some people look for other job in the urban centers and so on. The third figure says that this type of adaptation behavior depends upon the severity of the shock. The severity of the shock is represented by the monetary loss. To shock, household utilize their saving, or they borrow money, or they even sell their properties when the monetary loss is small. When the monetary loss is larger, but the monetary loss is small, when severity is less, they go for looking for other jobs. So by this we can say that household adaptation behavior is according to the severity of shock. And the data also says that these mechanisms, I have taken three mechanisms: labor reallocation, taking credit, and selling properties. The data simply has said that it is effective to use this kind of adaptation in the short run. So whenever a household is affected by the shock and do not adopt this adaptation mechanism, their consumption level falls very sharply, as seen in the first bar. But on employing the adaptation, we can see there is a shift towards the positive side after adapting such mechanism despite the shock. So this says that these mechanisms are quite effective. And to see their estimates, I perform the propensity score matching, and I control for the confounders and mediators that directly affect my dependent and independent variables. The other weak point of my paper could be that these confounders and mediators, they are not theoretical, and I have no rationale behind selecting these variables. I just chose this variable so that I could have treatment and control pair having the similar propensity score. So maybe in the future research or extension of this paper, I will definitely look towards it. So there are actually three treatment effects. One is lever reallocation, another is taking credit, and another is selling properties. And among those three treatment, the first is lever reallocation. The coefficient is almost 15,000, and it is significant. And the estimates, it means that for the sample of the population that is affected by the climate shock, on employing the capacity of the household to spend on food consumption expenditure rises by almost 15,000 compared to the household which is affected by the shock but did not apply any adaptation measures. So the coefficient is the difference in consumption level of two similar households, where one household employs the adaptation mechanism while other do not. So this is estimates for household which has taken credit, and the result is quite similar. The coefficient is 13,350, and it is significant. And similar is the case with selling land or selling properties. The coefficient is almost 15,000 and is significant. So this is covariate balance test. The estimates, they do not violate the ceteris paribus assumption. The propensity score between the mass pair is similar, and this enables us to relate the coefficient as causal estimate. And the matching has also reduced the bias. So initially, the problem that I had faced was that there was some balance in my covariate, but the variance was too high, so I couldn't exactly get the estimate. But after properly balancing and after carefully choosing the variables, I finally got the balance between the bias and various trade-off. So I'm quite happy now. And finally, to conclude my paper, I can say that compared to other shock, climate shock impacts Nepalese household more severely. And as a response to that, the household response to the climate shock according to the severity. In the long run, these three adaptations are helping to build the resilience of Nepalese people. And the exact amount is about 13 to 14,000 Nepalese rupees. For a similar household affected by the shock, the one employing the short-term adaptation improves their food consumption expenditure by about 13 to 14,000 Nepalese rupees compared to one that has not employed. And what I want to add on top of this study is that I want to explore the other constraint in adaptation measures and find the ways to lessen them. And another issue is that my paper focuses just on short-run resilience, because I have taken only 2 waves, and maybe I want to study the impact of long-run resilience, how to build the long-run resilience. Another issue I want to address is that there might be issues, long-term impact of short-term adaptation measures. I want to study that. For example, when a household sells their land or properties, that might be good in the short run. The household might get food to eat in the short run, but in the long run, I don't think that is sustainable. So I want to study the long run impact of these short run adaptation measures. And finally, I want to study the role of government and other agencies to build the resilience. And as I said earlier, there are few weak points in my papers. That is, I have assumed that food consumption is better dependent variable for my study. I need to work on validating it. And also I need to work on selecting better covariates and provide a better rationale towards it. And by saying that, I would like to end my presentation here. Thank you so much. And I would like to thank Sanim for organizing this event and making this event possible online. And please give me suggestion. This paper is still in development stage, so I'm very much open to suggestion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the nice presentation. Thank you very much for the nice presentations. So now I'd like to invite our honorable discussants, Shafqul Alam, who is the lead analyst of Bangladesh Energy. He's from Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, IEEFA. So I know Shafqul Bhai since long, and he has in-depth and thorough research on different financial aspects of Bangladesh energy and power sector. And he have drafted several documents as well as written in many national and international journals and papers. And I'd like to request Shafqul Bhai to highlight on the 4 papers and also the take-away lessons for all of us in this room. Thank you, Shafqul Bhai. This floor is for you.
Thank you, Sharia Bhai. Thanks, Sanem, for organizing this, and thanks to the presenters for 4 papers. I think papers have diversity, certainly. 3 papers energy and 1 is on climate change, and also interesting topic, the shocks of climate change and how to smoothening the impacts on households. If I look into the first paper that was on investment necessary for reaching our goal. So whatever it is, we don't have certain goal because policies are undergoing some revisions. If we still assume that we want to reach something like that, the paper presenter mentioned that 40 gigawatt, let's say, by 2041. So they have estimated the number, what it could look like, what it could look like in the next few years, next subsequent years from now onwards until 2041. So definitely, currently the capacity is very less. So they have clarified that 27 times they probably mentioned. So you have to ramp up. So that is yes. And then the number they have mentioned $60 billion. Right? So that also includes the operational cost. So yeah, but we can eventually segregate this. What is the capital investment? That is the most important part because those operational costs will obviously come from the operation. So we don't specifically need to look into that. Of course, for feasibility of projects, we need that. But to give the number to the policymakers, to the academician, researcher, or the investors and other players, I mean, the investment figure, that is the most important aspect. However, one important thing is whatever we estimate today for 2040, 2050, these numbers would not hold perfect, would not hold accurate, even after 2 years, even after 1 year, because of the falling cost of falling trajectory of all those accessories that we have been experiencing in last 15 years, 20 years. Significant cost drops happened, both for solar, wind, and other accessories, if you also include battery storage. I will not go more into that aspect, but he has mentioned some of the investment mechanisms, for example, vulnerability gap funding, not vulnerability, viability gap funding, PLI scheme, some of the schemes that India applies, and then also the Vietnam's case. Certainly, Bangladesh needs at least an ecosystem that will help flow of this fund, that investment. At least these billions of dollars that we would need in another 15 to 16 years. So we should have an ecosystem that would allow us, for example, certainly FDI would be a major source of funding. Multilateral development banks, they would certainly be a major source of funding. And then today also I wrote in one of the articles Daily Star on green financing. The scheme is very good, particularly for the small scale projects, decentralized projects, because of the very low interest rates, but it is very difficult to access. So we need to streamline this, all those things, so that, for example, if an industry wants to implement a rooftop solar, they can easily access that fund. So these are barriers we need to actually remove. For duties, yes, we have been discussing this for many years, but duties are only applicable for small scale projects and decentralized system. These are not applicable for utility scale projects, input utility. So He also mentioned about IPP's ambition. Yes, it has been a matter of discussion. This current government is also considering a revision. Shareba is also advocating for that, why it should be revised. So we don't go into that, but overall it's a good paper. But once again, the fact is the investment figure will change, but it will certainly give an indication to the policymakers to what extent they should be prepared, should be ready for this kind of investment. And for paper 2, that is also interesting. I would appreciate that. Are you a student of undergrad or master's? Okay, so that is I mean. She has taken this paper. I think that should be appreciated at this stage. But a few things from data. This is suggestion, because I also used to do, even in my engineering time. What happened? My thesis dissertation was, I had to resubmit 3 times. So there is because of data and other things. So here also I see Bangladesh first imported LNG in August 2018. Okay, so 2017-18 is a fiscal year. So if it is July to June, then in that fiscal year, 0.06 something figure is mentioned, that should not be there. And then again in 21-22, right? So it declined, but due to Ukraine-Russia crisis, only 10 to 50%, the import decrease, but not so sharp decline. Why? 80% of our, 75% of our imports are from long-term contracts. So, okay, so I saw that you have used data from GBS or somewhere, but you can also check into hydrocarbon units data that provides monthly data. So, anyway, the FX risk and the transport risk, all those you have mentioned, but you have also touched on diversity. With diversity, I don't think risk has increased. With diversity, risk should not be increased. That is, yeah. So, and other thing is, for Bangladesh, if we say FX risk, it has actually severely affected. The impact not only was on those sectors you mentioned, the way power sector, no, not the power sector. Ultimately, the most affected sector was industry, because of that you need to check some other factors as well. Like, what was the impact on the tariff? For instance, because of that, government had to increase gas price for the industries by more than 150%. But for power sector, it also increased, but power sector is still subsidized. Per unit rate is 15 per cubic meter, whereas industry is paying 30 per cubic meter, and for captive power, 30.75. So not only these variables, but also you can look into other impacts on the ground. Then it will give you more rational results. But I would say this is, a significant endeavor to take forward. On the governance issue, so I checked data, for example, those countries, 15 countries, I see the 281 observations, right? So is this the data of last 20 years? Okay, so one point is, even in, while analyzing this, Bangladesh, while in our electricity system, it does not have much renewable. But when you compare those countries' renewable share, is it compared with only the grid-connected electricity and our grid-connected electricity, or these countries' grid-connected electricity, or their energy system?
So actually, RCP countries doesn't include the Bangladesh.
No. Their countries' data. So if that analysis includes renewable energy share in the total energy system, or only the electricity system, because of these parameters, these analysis come. If we consider only the grid-based system, that analysis is something else, because Bangladesh significantly uses, although it has issues, significantly uses biomass in the total energy system. So this analysis, for apple-to-apple comparison, this is one aspect very important. Another aspect, not only the issue of rule of law, but corruption, but some of the parameters that should be like, government's ambition, how, policy level ambition, whether it is ambitious or not. This factor is also important. And another factor, not only, I don't see significant misappropriation of resources from renewable energy sector to other sector happened in Bangladesh. because Bangladesh did not have any dedicated funding facility for renewable energy from the government side as of now. So the corruption and other things, okay, this may have impact, certainly academically, and also different models can certainly say. But from practical point of view, if we look into this, policy ambition and other ecosystem, for example, decentralized system like rooftop solar. So high import duties had significant impact at one stage. Another impact was the high overall cost. Let's say 5 years back, technology cost was so high that that eventually affected Bangladesh. And other factor is Bangladesh is so heavily dependent on import. Had it been the case like India or China, let's say, if we could have produced some of the exercises locally, things would have been certainly different. But of course, there are issues like this. And another factor, I don't know whether awareness raising is a part of good governance, or I don't know. But if it is so, then it also has a role, particularly for decentralized system like in industries. So I think overall it's a good paper. Yeah, of course. But choosing the variables, that is an issue. But one point I will have to say, I just saw that your log of methane, why inside that is 1,000 metric tons of CO2? That's because methane, if you consider just 2 weeks, consider that is just it has a range. For example, if it is for combustion, I mean, if it is used as a fossil fuel, then it has certain number. If it is like biomass, if it is there in the rice field or it is fermented and then it decomposed and then methane is emitted, then. But certainly it varies from 27 to 29. I mean, it is 27 to 29 times potent compared to CO2. So, but log of 27 does not give us the figure of 1,000, right? Yes. So there might be some correction needed for that. But I would say, I mean, with some fine tuning of these variables, your paper will certainly be very good result. For the paper on climate change and its impact, certainly it has similarity, not in terms of exact consumption pattern of our economy and the Nepalese economy, but certainly climate change shocks that affect almost in a similar way if we consider our coastal areas, particularly southern belts. So yes, you have rightly pointed out that these short-term measures like labor reallocation, this is also happening in our southern district, where access to water is significantly challenging, and also fuel sources are not sufficiently available. So that is happening in southern district. And taking loan, yes, they are often compelled to do so, particularly if they don't have saving. And then they also sell property. This all happens in the short term and to meet the immediate impact. So yes, but the long term that you have mentioned, yes, that needs to be also checked. But you have not mentioned, I would not say, but you have mentioned the corruption. I haven't seen your paper, but in this case, government measures, government initiatives, those will also play a significant role. How the government, how the policy will address some of will help people to address some of the impacts of climate change. So that is also one thing. But this is a good finding that I see that the resilience will increase by the number you have mentioned, right? 15,000, 13,000 to 15,000. So that is a good, I would say, a good number. And also will have academic relevance. But how the government measures will help, and also the long term, how to address this from the long term perspective. That will also be important. Thank you. Thank you. I would say all 4 papers have significant merits. Thank you.
Thank you, Shafibhai, for in-depth discussion. And now we'll have 10 minutes for open discussion, and then we'll have 10 minutes for question and answer session. So it's open discussion. If you have any remarks or any comments on the papers, you can leave. So no discussion or comments on the papers. Then we can go for question and answer session. So if you have any questions.
Hello everyone, my name is Tausif. I'm an undergrad student at the Institute of Health Economics, University of Dhaka. My question is to Ikramul Hassan there. We know due to the geographical location, Bangladesh is a climate vulnerable country, one of the most climate vulnerable countries. So what are the strategies that you plan to develop a project like renewable project in flood affected or cyclone prone areas?
I think we can answer question by question. Then it will be more interactive.
So, as you mentioned that about climate change, so each area has these epic features. So, if I visited several solar power plants in Fox's by the Techno, so it is basically like climate affected in a sense, it's salinity prone area. So, since those lands were not fertile because of salinity, so these were perfect for solar power plant. So yeah, basically our objective was not to explore overall climate issues, but we have this idea that we have lands like Chorlands, and also we have visited Khulna. They used to cultivate like shrimps, and it was very popular during 90s. But after some time, that popularity now gone. So these land are there, so we can utilize those lands to build new solar or wind power plants. Thank you.
So if I can add something from my experience, recently I was involved in a project that is called the Offshore Wind Feasibility Study of Bangladesh. I worked in that project as a deputy team leader, and the feasibility study was mainly conducted by the Ministry of Power, Energy and Mineral Resources, and the fund was from ADB. So it was a very high-level team. I mean, almost majority expert was from Europe, and we found that the coastal region of Bangladesh is prone to cyclones. And for this, what we need to do, because it's a wind turbine. For the wind turbine, there is some design speed. I mean, up to which wind speed a wind turbine can withstand. If the wind speed goes below that one, the wind turbine it may fall down, or there can be accident. For in that case, we need to order for special, type of wind turbines. That is number one, and also the footings and also the structure. We need to reinforce the structure, and for that reason, the cost of technology, or the project increases. And the second thing is that if there is frequent, cyclones, so we need to cover the risk, the investment risk, and the investment risk is covered mainly by the insurance. And if an area is something like that, the insurance premium is much higher, and we need to incorporate all these things into our project cost. And that's why, Bangladesh, the implementation of wind power in the coastal region, and the coastal region of Bangladesh is the only area where we can have wind energy. I mean, commercial or financially viable wind projects there. But if you compare with the price in other countries, then definitely the price of wind power projects in Bangladesh will be much higher.
My question is to Ikram Bhai. You said that. Okay. I want to ask that why would investors select Bangladesh in order to build renewable energy? If we consider that our current situation is not in
Thank you. So I am Safwan from Department of Economics, University of Dhaka. So there are two questions for Mr. Ikramul Hassan. My first question is, you highlighted the importance of fostering partnerships with technologically advanced countries. So as there is technological and intellectual property restrictions, right? So how do you propose addressing these challenges to ensure the renewable energy infrastructures? And my second question is, you also discussed the role of private sector partnership in expanding renewable energy. So there are some risks of market distortion and monopolistic behavior. So how do you address these problems? Thank you.
So, technology. So you said about the restriction of technology and intellectual. Could you please? Okay, intellectual property. So Bangladesh is still in LDC, and so we, as long as we remain in LDC till 2029, although it will be graduated to 2026, but we will have the facilities till 2019. So we can utilize and we can like targeting that we can develop more rapidly. We should target in that way. And also, as sir mentioned, we also visited a wind power plant. So they had this wind turbine. And sir rightly mentioned that if the wind is, there is more wind, then it will not be feasible for the. I had a perception that if there is cyclone, there is more wind, then more electricity will be produced. But it doesn't work like that way. What happens there with the new technology? Before there was wind power, and what happened with this cyclone effect? Those turbines were broke down. But with this new technology, when there is a cyclone, those turbines automatically will go into a shape that wind will not affect it. It will remain intact. So already, if you visit Khurushkul, the plant is there. Already countries utilize it, but it's not enough. The extent is very minimum, so it should be enhanced. And what is your second question?
The second question was about private sector partnership and market distortion and monopolistic behavior.
Exactly. The fact is, if you look at the existing large power plants, like the Eximco power plant is 200 megawatt. If you see the Baget had 100 megawatt. So these all are kind of initiated by the private here. But if you also look closely, that owners also have large stake in fossil fuel as well. So they are kind of like using as a makeup to that. Well, see, we are also producing renewables, not only fossil fuel based power plants. So there was a lack of government side monitoring lacking. So in that way, the monitoring and so that pure-hearted investor can come, and that's why we need viability gap funding, because due to high upfront cost, a new firm cannot. Even if it wants, it can come because of this high upfront cost. So if the government comes here with subsidies and other incentives, then it will be very good. Thank you for your question.
So you can take two more questions. Yeah.
আমার কোশ্চেনটা আমার আপুর কাছে, আমার কোশ্চেনটা একটু সিলি যে আপনি রিসার্চ পেপারে দেখালেন যে পাকিস্তানের হচ্ছে হোটেল এন্ড রেস্টুরেন্টে এলএনজি কনজাম্পশন সবচেয়ে বেশি, আর বাংলাদেশের হচ্ছে পাওয়ার সেক্টরে এলএনজি কনজাম্পশন সবচেয়ে বেশি। তো পাকিস্তানে অ্যাকচুয়ালি পাওয়ার সেক্টরে এলএনজি কনজাম্পশন কেন বেশি হচ্ছে না? ওখান থেকে কি আমরা কোনো লেসন নিয়ে এটা বাংলাদেশে আমরা কম এলএনজি কনজাম্পশন করতে পারি কিনা? Thank you so much. Okay, firstly, LNG consumption Beshina. Actually, I showed that the sectors where LNG is consuming the most. So, firstly, power sector is the bears the maximum burden for it in both countries. However, for Pakistan, the hotels and restaurants is the second most affected sector. For ours, it's industry. Now, I have the main reason behind this is we are using LPG in cooking in hotels and in restaurants. students in our country, we are more familiar with the LPG because in 2010, government introduced the policy that there was no pipeline gas connections. From that era, we have swiftly shifted towards LPG. Whereas Pakistan, the LPG market is quite tight compared to our country. They also use LPG, but compared to our country, it is tight. For this reason, they are the sufferers there, and for our country, this can. Thank you.
Just okay. So what happens in Bangladesh? Total out of the total gas consumption, roughly 20-25% is imported. That is LNG. So it is not like that. This LNG is going to this power plant. It is going to that industry. It's all come here and then it is regasified. Then it is a gas, as our own gas. It just goes to the network. So now then it is not being tracked. What is the composition now? What is the composition here? It is not that way. But if we build a dedicated power plant where we want to use LNG in the absence of gas, then we will be able to count. We will be able to do the monitoring. Exactly this much cubic meter, this million cubic meter of LNG is used by gas.
So we're very close to our end, so we can take one question more.
Thank you again. My question is to Mr. Arafat Jubail. So you focused on urbanization and green growth. So my question is, what strategies the policymakers can take so that we can balance both of these? Because we need both the infrastructural development and environmental sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And as you know, we have actually mentioned the 15 countries, 15 RCEP countries, and these countries have different strategies, and these countries have different approaches to that. And I think countries like New Zealand and countries like China are actually transitioning to that kind of phase where they are actually promoting some sort of systems like grid system, like green grid system, and these actually also promote the flow of FDI to these countries. So from that kind of perspective, I think urbanization actually can impact the growth of FDI growth and actually also impact the growth of green growth, what I would say. So depending on the country's perspective, this can differ, and what actually preferred in China or what actually preferred in Vietnam, that would not be mentionable in India or Bangladesh like that. So I think country-wise perspective can differ, and as our panel and other presenters have also mentioned, our country would have some sort of that kind of strategy. So yeah, thank you.
So I had one question, to Akram. So in the future cost, one thing we have avoided, and very often we have noted this one, because renewable energy, if you have a high renewable energy penetration in the grid, and renewable energy basically are distributed in nature. I mean, not considered. Say, for example, the atomic power plant, what we are developing in Ethiopia, that is around 2,500 megawatt. But renewable will never be like that. Okay, and we need to extend the distribution network. And the renewable energy that we have, and we are foreseeing that will contribute significantly in the Bangladesh power sector, are variable in nature. To address the variability, our present grid cannot, take that one. And we need to incorporate smart grid, and also we need to modernize the grid. I have a question whether you have you did a research, but whether you have considered the cost of grid modernization, the extension of grid, and also the incorporation of smart grid in your studies.
So, thank you, sir, for your question. So we realized this gap actually attending several seminars with you as well at our event. But we tried to incorporate this, but it was due to lack of data, or we are still like kind of unaware how the whole things work. So it was our real capability. So I will take it as our next research topic, and definitely we will incorporate in our next study. Thank you, sir.
So thank you very much for all the presenter and also our discussion. And we have learned a lot simply. So now the concluding remarks. And for me, I say that I'm very lucky that I was involved in a few national policy documents that those are discussed, very frequently. So first one is the data plan that I drafted with, the expert from Netherlands. I mean, where we have first, drafted and what will be the renewable energy portion in the grid. And at that moment, there were no prediction, no scenarios. And in that document, I have, back in 2016, I mentioned that 30% should come from renewables. And after that, I was involved in Bangladesh Climate Prosperity Plan, and which was literally given the name of Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan. And in the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, as I was involved in many projects developing Bangladesh, I found that Bangladesh can have more potential, or Bangladesh can tap more renewable energy. So in the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, we have mentioned that around 40% can come, and it's something like roughly 40,000 megawatt. Then solar energy roadmap was also drafted by me, but unfortunately, this document was not approved by the then government, and the net metering guideline. And this is the last policy document that I have drafted. I mean, in Bangladesh, we have around, I have counted that around, not counted, estimated, around 12,000 megawatt we can tap from, from the roof only. So Bangladesh has immense potential. And also we have the studies, National Renewable Energy Laboratory of USA and funded by USAID. They did the onshore wind feasibility study of Bangladesh, and they identified that Bangladesh has a theoretical potential of 30,000 megawatt, but I don't believe that one, because we have the potential only in the coastal region, and 30,000 megawatt is the theoretical potential that if we can harness all. But we need to consider that in the city areas and also in the environmentally, vulnerable areas or the sensitive areas, we cannot have wind parks, and also close to the airports. So we need to have some, height limitation, and also in the tourism area, you cannot have wind power plants. So if we can, exclude all these areas, then I think that 7,000 to 8,000 megawatt maximum we can get from the, the onshore areas. And in the offshore areas, we have found that there is theoretical potential of around 66,000 megawatt of wind power potential in the offshore area. And Bangladesh is very lucky that our continental shelf, is very shallow. Normally, we consider the offshore wind feasible area up to where the water depth is 50 meters. And in some areas, from the coastline, you can go up to 70 kilometers, and you can get the water depth of within 50 meters. That means Bangladesh has a huge, potential in the offshore, wind project development. But there is limitations, The offshore projects are costly in nature, and though we have very frequent cyclone, but our average wind speed or the wind, power density is not that much that we have in the, in the Northern Europe, especially in Denmark or Netherlands. So, and again, the offshore wind is costly, and the transmission infrastructure, the undersea submarine cables is very costly, and we cannot install less than 500 megawatt wind park for in the offshore areas, because otherwise we cannot make it financially viable. And there is the questions come that our transmission infrastructure is our bottleneck. In the past government, we can see that some government they have developed a lot of distribution lines, and some government they have installed a lot of power plants, but nobody has taken care of the transmission system of Bangladesh. And in the power systems, we have three sections. One is the generation, one is transmission, and one is distribution. But the transmission systems has not yet been developed. And what we have, found out during our studies of offshore wind project development, we find that only 1,500 to 2,000 megawatt we can extract in the coastal region. That means we can develop the wind power project there, and with the current transmission infrastructure, we can evacuate at best 2,000 megawatt, but there is an ample opportunity of 66,000 megawatt in the coastal region, Bangladesh. And that's why we need to have, invest simply a lot for transmission infrastructure, development. And I have seen that in most of the studies, the cost of the modernization of the transmission infrastructure, as I have already mentioned, that the renewable energy that we have are mainly variable in nature, and to address the variability, you need to have a very robust transmission infrastructure as well as the smart grid, because the generation is always changing. Okay, but no study, I didn't find those studies. I mean, any study on Bangladesh, what will be the cost? I mean, if you want to have, say, for example, the 10% of our total energy power from renewables, what will be the cost of 20%? Because the cost will change. It's not only the technology. What we are calculating, I mean, in the most financial model, that if per megawatt cost is $1 million, then if we have 10,000 megawatt, we need $10 billion. If we have 20,000 megawatt, then we need $20 billion. It's not like that. Maybe it will increase because we need to modernize the grid as well. So that we should address. So we are running shortage of time, but I would like to say that there is ample opportunities in Bangladesh to tap. And another thing is that if we can say, for example, in Europe, you can see Europe is a single grid, and sometimes you can see that Denmark in the news, that Denmark is produced 150% of their generation from renewables. I mean, their demands is 100%, and they are producing 150%. So it's something like it's somewhat is like unbelievable. How can they produce such things? But we need to consider that they are connected with the European grid. Maybe that generation is maybe less than 5% of the total, in the grid. So if we want to have higher percentage of renewable energy, then we need to have the interconnected regional grid. I mean, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Bhutan. Then what we can do, India has some places, the desert area, where we can generate solar power, especially 3 to 3.5 US dollar cents. And also Nepal and Bhutan have hydropower potential. And there is a matching in Bangladesh and Nepal. Nepal have their seasonal peak power demand during winter, but Bangladesh has seasonal peak power demand during summer. And because they need heating load and cooling load. So, and also Nepal cannot produce much during winter. So in winter we have surplus power. We can easily export our surplus power to Nepal during winter and can get power because they have the melted ice and all the rivers are full during the summer season. They have more power. So we can easily import power from Nepal. So these are the things. The regional connectivity is very important, and we need to also work with that. 40%, 50%, or 60%, whatever we said. So in the context of Bangladesh, I cannot foresee 100%, on renewables or 100% from green energy. It is very difficult because Bangladesh is based on, variable renewable energy. But some other countries, say for example, Iceland, they are almost producing 95% of their total power from renewables because they have a lot of geothermal power, and geothermal you can easily what we call the dispatchable renewable energy. That means whatever you want, you can easily extract. But solar and wind are not dispatchable. So we need to work on that. We need to do, rigorous research and comprehensive research on that. And another point I should highlight that in Bangladesh we have many policy documents, but no two policy documents you will see that they are coherent or they are synchronous in nature. In different policy documents, you can find a different percentage. Say, for example, Bangladesh has a very, in the government sector, they value it much. That is the perspective plan of Bangladesh. In the perspective plan of Bangladesh, you will see that in that document, in the power sector, they have written a lot of, very nice words on renewables, the green got and others. But if you go to the table and what will be the composition of the power generation, you will find renewable energy is only 1%. This is unbelievable. So first we need to have we need to have a comprehensive feasibility study, how much renewable power we can tap. Then we need to have the grid study, what we need to do at what percent of penetration. Then we need to develop our policy, our guideline, and also our roadmap. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to achieve the target. So having said so, I would like to say that there's possibilities and technology is changing very fast. Say, for example, when I started first working in Bangladesh back in 2008-9, and at that time we used to buy solar panel at a cost of 2.5 US dollar, 2.5 US dollar per watt peak. And you know what is the cost of solar PV panel right at this moment? It's around 9 US dollar cents. That means what is the percentage? 2.5 and 9, that means less than 3% or something like that. So there is no technology in the world you can say that the price has declined that much. So the future is very bright, but we need to work comprehensively, and also we need to have some research as well. Having said so, I'd like to conclude this session. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, we have missed the session. So certificate giving session.
Okay, now we are moving to the audio.
আর আমাদের যে নেপাল থেকে প্রেজেন্ট করলো ওটাকে আমরা পাঠিয়ে দেবো। So thank you, Sushant. Please বলে দিতে হবে Sushant is here or not?
Sushant, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, so we're ending the session and your certificate will be provided through online.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.